Hey guys, Alec Hunter here with another 5-9 gaming review for WandaVision. This time we're talking about episode 4, titled We Interrupt This Program, which is a fantastic title for this episode because that's exactly what it does to the entire series. It changes the format from the sitcom format and brings us back into the quote-unquote real world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When we open up, we are actually taken back in time to the blip. When everybody came back from the snap, and we find out that Monica Rambeau was a victim of the snap. Pretty intense scene. Nolar, what are your thoughts where this episode entered?
It's pretty cool because I remember right when it happened, you were like, this is a really different take on what we've seen from people coming back from the snap, or the blip as you called it. So like in Far From Home, we saw they made it very comedic with the band coming back and then the gym and all that kind of stuff. Like, oh yeah, it's funny, people come back. But this was actually very intense because she shows up, she has no idea what's going on. They're in a hospital and people are showing up left and right. It's just chaos. It's just, you get the real adrenaline moment of like, oh man, this is going on. And so I thought that was really well executed in the sense that they gave us a different outlook as to the effect of the blip.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we also found out that a character we met in Captain Marvel died off screen. Monica's mother, called Photon. I can't remember the character's first name. Sorry. Maria Rambeau. She passed away. We were informed that it was 2 years after Monica disappeared. So we just had a pretty important side character just killed off screen. Waffles, what do you think about that?
I think it wasn't that big of a deal because when we got to know her, we learned about her in the past, and I'm kind of okay with them. Like, I like the character, but I'm okay with them killing her off screen and then just moving on from there.
This was the first of many connections to the greater MCU that this episode makes, making the direct tie-in to Captain Marvel. Yeah,
Nas makes a great point. There's so many different characters that connect in here. We do learn what S.W.O.R.D stands for, and it's Sentient Weapon Observation Research Response Division.
It's basically the new version of S.H.I.E.L.D. because S.H.I.E.L.D. collapsed, if you remember, I guess.
Right. Yeah. This is the new protective measure.
Yeah.
Just because we do kind of compare comic book stuff, the important thing is the W in this situation. In the comic books, it's Sentient World Observation and Response Department. So in this show, it's specifically Sentient Weapon. So they did make it very clear that there are terrestrial and non-terrestrial missions. And we learned that Monica got grounded. Nas, what did you think of the whole finding out that Monica's mom was the one who built S.W.O.R.D?
I don't know. Again, that's a lot handled off screen. They just kind of gloss over it. I mean, understandably, this is a TV show and not like a 2-hour-long movie, so you can't get but so much backstory. And I don't know if a flashback would have really been necessary here. It probably would have hurt the pacing of the show. I don't like it when things happen off screen, but in a situation like this, where they have to cover so much information so quickly, I think it served the plot well enough. I also, on record, am not the biggest fan of the Captain Marvel series, but if they can take bits and pieces of different MCU things like that and build something new with them, then maybe it'll swing that back into a direction that's more positive. So, again, a lot of stuff happening off screen that's just being told to us, but I'm sure if you are a fan of the comics, you have a better idea of what's going on. Kevin Feige and all the people that are involved in this, both directly and indirectly, are really going for fan service here, but in a very intelligent way. So, again, those of you who follow the comics are just going to be, all the more, in the know when stuff like this pops up.
I think it's also kind of fun to be able to try to notice when there's the tie-ins, because some of them are obvious, like those characters, but some of them have been like very subtle, where I've had to go back and look it up or like watch the show again, be able to find them.
Well, yeah. Again, I'm sure we'll go into the pacing of the show, but when the episode 1 and 2 first happened, you're confused as to whether that beekeeper guy is a villain or not. And this episode kind of answers all those questions while also making, again, tons of references. This episode actually feels like an MCU production, where the first 3 were really off the wall. Not in a bad way. It's just we're starting to return to a more familiar formula now.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. That's a big thing. I think a lot of people are gonna see this episode, and the people who have liked the structure up to this point, that kind of sitcom thing, they're gonna be a little disappointed. But I think the traditional MCU fan is like, okay, this is where we come in.
Yep.
You know,
I don't
this
think
is our show.
This show was not ever intended to be some like lighthearted, non-serious experience. They just started it that way to rile everybody up, to keep you on your toes, to confuse you. Like, that's not the actual like intended formula of the entire show. I would expect that it's going to get very serious. And we haven't spoke about this yet, but we're going to get into the fact that there's a returning character from the Thor series who makes an appearance. So I'm expecting this to have very heavy tie-ins to things like Thor, Love and Thunder, next Guardians of the Galaxy, potentially. Like, they're really going hard with interconnecting all this stuff now at this point.
I will say on the like sitcom tone thing, that even with the lightheartedness, they still use that in a way to make it off-putting. So like they had that lighthearted feeling so that those moments would hit harder of, okay, something's weird, it feels off, I don't feel comfortable in this moment. And like, I think that was the whole point of it. So like, if you go in like you're expecting the whole thing to be like that, I would be very surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
I feel like this show's going to take some dark and surprising turns, which is actually, I'm all for it.
Right. Yeah. And we do learn that Westview is in the state of New Jersey, which makes sense based on where the Avengers complex was, which was in upstate New York. So they really haven't gone that far away from where everything went down. We do run into Jimmy Woo from Ant-Man 2. He is looking for a missing person, and he actually has an interesting line in there that's kind of just quickly glossed over. He goes to contact this person who's in witness protection, can't get a hold of him. Then goes to contact all of the people in his life, and none of them remember him. So he was residing in Westview, but nobody outside of Westview remembers him. And that's reinforced by the police officer who said there's no such place as Westview while standing next to the Westview sign.
That was a good joke as well, though. I enjoyed that.
So
it's Eastview now, not Westview.
Right. And where are you from? Eastview. So
it's like Wanda didn't change that much.
Right.
Yeah.
So it seems like anybody who lives in the town, Wanda's power extends out to anybody who's ever known them and has basically erased those people from memory.
Yeah,
which would explain why there's not a ton of like FBI and stuff descending on this town. Like, where are all these people? Until Monica gets herself sucked in.
Yeah.
Right?
That was the key.
That was an interesting thing because, it's always like, oh, well, you could see the shimmer, there's something, a barrier there. Let me touch it. Actually, let me put my whole hand in there. And then she just sucks right in. And then you're like, oh, what happened? So now, like, again, this episode is very good in the sense that it clears up a lot of, like, questions that we had in the first 3 episodes. Like, well, where did all these people come from? Or what's going on? Why is S.W.O.R.D such a prominent thing? And now we understand why. So yeah, that was just really interesting that she just gets sucked right in, and you're like, okay, well, I wouldn't do that personally, but no, got to drive the plot along, right?
Yeah. A couple points I wanted to quickly touch on that are non-essential to the plot are, all the visual effects that have been going on in the show are honestly consistent with like the theatrical production.
Yep.
So there's been no disappointment. Like when Wanda does her, Scarlet Witch magic effects, it's the same presentation. Like, their budget seems to be on par to keep it a completely consistent visual vibe with the movies, which is really, really cool. I like that a lot.
And one thing I like on that note as well. Yeah, the mouse does have deep pockets, yeah. But one thing I like on that point is that they will change how her effects are being done based on what the situation is. So like if it's being done in the context of the show, it's done in like realistic 1960s, 1970s effects. But if it's done like in context of modern stuff, you see very cinematic modern effects. So I love that. It's a good hint and shows us what situation it is, what the context is, and I love it.
Yeah. To hammer on Waffles' point is what I noticed is the aspect ratio. So when it's the show, it's 4:3, which if you're relatively older like myself and Alec here, will know
Alec.
4:3. Yeah. But then when it goes to the context of, okay, now we're not talking about the show, we're talking about the MCU. It goes by the widescreen 16:9, or it looks
You can
a
actually
little
watch
wider
it
than that.
transform. Like the screen
Yeah.
slowly
Yeah.
morphed.
So like that's what Waffles is saying is like, oh, the context is this scene is playing out in the viewpoint of Wanda in the show, and then it starts to transform, and then it plays out in the MCU format, and everyone's like, oh, okay, this is a different meaning behind what's going on. Same action we saw in the show, but now it's a different perspective, and then you know what's going to happen, and that gives it a lot more meaningful presence than say what we had before.
I mean, I was just strictly referring to like the budget and the quality of the effects is like right on par with all their movies. So
Yeah, absolutely.
they're not sparing expenses, as John Hammond from Jurassic Park would say.
Yeah.
But even then, I love seeing the FBI agent from Spider-Man: Far From Home. He's extremely good at being comedic, but also keeping the tone like believable. Like he says funny stuff, he's goofy, but like maintains some level of seriousness where it's not like, okay, my suspension of disbelief is now falling apart. So I really like seeing him again, and get just another tie-in to the greater MCU, which you could probably even have like a tally counter on screen to different references and stuff that they made. But yeah, I've found this episode to be probably the most enjoyable so far.
And just to like confirm, so the comment section doesn't come after us. Was he also in Spider-Man? Because I know him from Ant-Man.
Yeah, I believe he was in Ant-Man too. He was
Jimmy Woo? Yeah, I think it's
Oh,
Ant-Man.
is it Ant-Man too?
Okay. I just want to say that so comment section doesn't come after us.
That was just a slip of my tongue. I'm gonna say
All good, all
Ant-Man,
good.
Spider-Man, all right.
Yeah.
They're all men.
Insects. Yeah, they're all man, they're all insects.
Just call it Bugman. It's all good.
A bug man.
All right. So speaking of characters from other movies, we do see Darcy Lewis from the Thor franchise. What was it? Natalie Portman's assistant.
Kat Dennings, right?
Yep, Kat
That's
Dennings.
her name? Yep.
Yeah, that makes
And I love her in everything that she does for
Yes.
Marvel. Like she has like the point when like they kiss at the end of the first quote unquote episode. She's like, "Aw," it's just everything she does.
Yeah,
and
it's
then,
like
they're
her
talking about
reactions.
the babies, and she's like, "What? I'm invested."
And the whole chip
great
scene
source
was
of comedy for
amazing.
the episode.
Yes.
Oh yeah, the chip scene is like, hey, you ever want one? You want one? And then Jim's all going off. Yeah, I've always thought about kids, and then she literally meant you want a chip, right? And so good comedic moments.
Yeah.
So,
They
but
land well.
she had a good part because she explained the whole CMBR,
Yeah,
right?
the
It was that.
Yes. Yeah,
cosmic
CMBR.
microwave background radiation. And then she picked up the television signals mixed in to that
With that,
wavelength
yeah.
or whatever. She did a lot better job of explaining it than I just did.
They made
Watch the show,
her
too.
character is just insanely smart. Like you don't even really need to question it. Like she's like Einstein levels of can just look at stuff and know what's going on. Which I'm sure some of that is to just serve the plot and keep the show moving quickly. But I mean, she pulls it off well. And again, kind of like the Agent Woo, like it's there's some level of subtle humor to it, but it's not a breaking of suspension of disbelief where it pulls you out of the show, really. So
Especially since we've seen her doing that kind of stuff since the first Thor movie, so it really feels like it's just part of her character.
it's also like tie-in tally number 3 or 4 from just other MCU stuff that they're all just really well integrating all together into this new situation, which I really like. We got elements from all these different movies beforehand that are all coming together. It'll be really interesting to see how they do that with all these other characters that might be split off doing their own thing right now.
Oh, definitely.
So as much as I would like to sit here and have like a 45-minute discussion about every little thing that happened in this episode, because
Really?
a ton of stuff happened in all of like 23 minutes.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah.
They literally caught you up from episode 1 to episode 3 on S.W.O.R.D's viewpoint of things, how S.W.O.R.D found out about it, what they did in response to it, the things they've been researching, who's involved. You see a shot in there of when they're figuring out who is all in the sitcom.
Yes.
There's a board where they've started putting people's aliases from the show, their real name, and their IDs up, and everybody on that board had an ID on their dossier except for Agnes. That's one thing I think is going to be really important later on that I wanted to point out. Like I've talked before about who I think that character is, so I'm not going to go off on that tangent again.
Well, I would say the internet rumors are just saying that it's highly likely to possibly be a Mephisto. So.
Yep. But yeah, there was a ton of stuff that happened in here. We found out what S.W.O.R.D guy was all about. It turned out that he was in a hazmat suit, crossed the barrier, and that got turned into the beekeeper suit.
Yep.
Which does confirm things change when he goes
helicopter drone they flew through the barrier turned into a little toy helicopter. So it seems like Wanda's little bubble, it's just raw reality manipulation that's happening. And
Exactly.
And I'm sure there's some parallel that you could draw here through psychology about, willing your reality to be something different, like being in denial. I'm sure there's something we can draw here,
Yeah, just to hammer on the point that her reality manipulation actually is the fact that, we saw in last episode when Monica Rambeau gets pushed out, she's still in her 70s outfit, right? So she was that in the bubble, and now she's outside like that. It means that no matter what she views it or changes, whatever Wanda does, it's permanent. And we got that reinforced today with that the beekeeper, right? He goes in. He had a cable to make sure he doesn't get sucked in, but the cable gets detached and it becomes this little jump rope thing. And they made a point with it because when they brought it back up, they see it at the tail piece was this jump rope piece, and they're like, "Why is it like this?" So, just further reinforces the point that when Scarlet Witch and Wanda is doing her reality manipulation, it is actually reality manipulation for all intents and purposes.
Yep. And then, go ahead, Naz.
Oh, I was gonna say, I don't know if because this episode it doesn't really push the plot forward at all. It catches us up from the perspective of S.W.O.R.D to where we kind of are in episode 3 from Wanda's perspective. There's still tons of questions about the twins, because again, they are featured in the comics as well, again relating to Mephisto, and then other questions I've seen stuff online about how Quicksilver might get involved, all these other different rumors and speculation. So not too much has actually been pushed forward, but we've now been kind of caught up from both perspectives. So I really anticipate next week's episode kind of carrying things forward, because we still don't have too many answers about the commercials that feature Hydra. We don't have anything other than very subtle hints with all the hexagons that AIM might possibly be involved. We don't know if this is all just Wanda's emotional trauma from the events of Endgame, or is this, her being manipulated. So this episode does a really good job of, again, explaining the polar opposite side of what we've all experienced already without really spoiling too much new stuff.
Right. And then moving on to the ending of this episode, it actually catches us up right to the point of the ending of the previous episode, except for we see how Monica was ejected from the world. Straight up thrown through walls. What?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's where we saw those modern day powers as well. The effects changed.
Yep.
Yeah, that's when the screen morphed to 16:9 before it changed back to 4:3 for the ending. And again, the effects were great. And she specifically also didn't do any sort of lethal damage to
Monica.
What was her name in the?
Geraldine.
Geraldine. Yeah, she didn't do lethal damage to her. She just literally pushed her out. So I wonder if there could be some other forces at play. And of course, we saw the dead Vision too for a second. So it seems like even Wanda herself is somewhat struggling to control her little bubble that she's built for herself.
It's little bits of her reality just keep cracking back in.
Yeah. I don't know if she's struggling. It's more like it's becoming more aware of her that this isn't real. But, and I guess this is the point I want to drive home with this, is that she realizes, yeah, Vision's dead. She knows that, but she looks away, and then he's back to being his full self. And then you could see, like, it's a little sinister, a smile of her. He's like, yeah, we don't need anything else. This is perfect. This is where we need to be. And then she just wants to live in this world, right? So she knows what's actually there. Like, we see those cracks, and she's well aware of it, but she's obviously willing to deny all of it just to live in this perfect world that she has. So whether or not she's doing it herself or someone else manipulating her, she's more than comfortable to accept the conditions that she's in, because this makes her happy compared to what her actual reality is, right? So
you could almost make a
one line that
parallel
especially
from that to the Wonder Woman movie, although I'm enjoying this much more.
what you're saying, Waffles?
I was gonna say there was one line she said that really stuck out to me was, "Don't worry, I've got everything under control," or something like
Right.
that.
I was
like,
just going to bring that up.
Okay.
Anybody who knows Scarlet Witch from the comic books knows that the one thing that Scarlet Witch never has is control.
True.
Like, every major event that involves Scarlet Witch is literally her going, crazy and losing control of her powers. So we are on the precipice of that, and I'm along for the ride. I'm ready.
Yeah, me too.
Buckle up.
Yeah, we didn't really learn a whole lot in terms of like pushing the plot forward, but just getting the whole context, this makes it way more intriguing than I thought in the beginning. So
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Basically, episode 4 rounds out the circle from episode 1 through 3, and we're on the same page now from both perspectives.
Yep.
And again, I anticipate them to continue to fill this with different references. Who do y'all think is going to be the first like Avenger or other character besides Wanda that shows up in this show? Just like as a gentlemanly guess,
My guess is Doctor Strange.
Yep.
Yeah,
'Cause
because it was supposed to come out right around the movie, right?
Yep.
Right. It's
And
supposed to tie into Multiverse of Madness.
And then the thing about this is it feels like she's the antagonist, not necessarily the bad guy, but she's going to be the antagonist. And then that's how this series, I feel, is setting her up to be for that movie, at least
Isn't
in the
there
original.
some potential for? Wasn't it rumored like Mr. Nightmare also? Isn't he potentially rumored to be partially involved with the multiverse movie with Doctor Strange?
Yeah, Nightmare could be involved in the movie, but I don't know what he would necessarily have to play in this show. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. If I were to guess, I would actually probably agree with the Doctor Strange that you picked, since they do dealings with each other, because one thing Marvel does is they do organize their like subcategories well. Like there's the magic users, and then there's the people like Iron Man and Thor and Cap, and then you have, like the more other side characters just grouped up really well. Like that's another thing they do pretty well. So I would anticipate definitely seeing more of the magically inclined characters in this show.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. So the important thing here isn't what we think about the episode, even though I think for the most part we all liked it. The important thing is what you guys thought about this episode. So go ahead, jump down in the comments, let us know what you guys are thinking. And we will be back again next week. So I am Alec Hunter here with Nazdarachi, Nolar, and Waffles. And we'll see you in the next one.
Peace
See
out,
you guys.
everybody.
Bye.